In this video, discover the incredible story of Daryl Davis, who helped dismantle hate by bridging divides with empathy and dialogue. His journey with Jeff Schoep, a former neo-Nazi leader, transformed them from adversaries to collaborators, showcasing the power of compassion to heal even the deepest divides. Let's dive into this remarkable tale of redemption and reconciliation.
Around the time when I met Daryl Davis.
Were you already having second thoughts about the direction of your life?
That's a tough one to answer. I was starting to see the humanity in others. Like after I moved to Detroit in December of 2007, and Detroit's a majority minority city, or people of different races. So I'm having more interactions with people of other races.
Detroit has one of the most complex racial histories in America, from the 1943 race riot to the Great Migration and 1967 uprising. Schoep's experience mirrors what sociologists describe as contact theory, the idea that exposure to outgroup members reduces prejudice when conditions allow meaningful interaction.
By 2016, I'd met Daryl Davis, and like I said, I didn't know I was meeting Daryl Davis. But
how'd you guys meet?
It was for Daryl's film, Accidental Courtesy.
Accidental Courtesy is a documentary directed by Matt Ornstein following Daryl Davis's real-life conversations with KKK members and neo-Nazis. Davis has personally collected over 200 robes and hoods from men who left the Klan after befriending him.
Okay, right.
So they had reached out and they explained the show, and I said, okay, because any opportunity to spread the propaganda of the movement, I'm going to do it, unless it was like Jerry Springer or something. So it sounded legit. I agreed to it. Didn't know I was meeting Daryl. I still would have done it, but I would have probably prepared to debate this guy, because I knew who he was. I knew he was pulling people out of the movement, and so this was at a place called Chris's Hot Dogs in Alabama, where Hank Williams had written the song. It was "Hey Hey Good Looking You" out there, right?
About a waitress,
right? And my girl and I were sitting outside, and Daryl steps out of a vehicle, and I'm thinking, I recognize this guy. He comes up, shakes my hand, we shake hands, and he says, "Hi, I'm Daryl Davis. You must be Jeff Schoep." And I'm thinking, where do I know that name from? Where do I know his face? It didn't quite register, because I'm just thinking about, this debate that we're going to get into.
There's a strange irony in this. Jeff's intent was propaganda, and he was prepared to engage in a spirited debate, knowing Daryl's reputation for pulling people out of extremist movements.
And then after we sat down, it clicked. It was like, oh, this is the guy that gets people out of these organizations. So at this point, I'm the head of the National Socialist Movement.
The National Socialist Movement, NSM, is the largest neo-Nazi group in the U.S., known for its white supremacist, racist, and anti-Semitic ideologies. Led by Jeff Schoep for 25 years until 2019, the NSM enforced strict racial policies, excluding non-white members.
And Daryl and I are getting along great. We're talking about music, we're talking about all these kind of things, and it clicks in my head, oh, wow, I'm getting along too well with this guy. He's the enemy, or so-called enemy. He's on the other side. So I better step it up here. So I pound my fist on the table and I said, Daryl, I'll fight to the last bullet for my people.
I can almost feel that collision, ideology meeting empathy head-on. There's a tragic irony here. He came to spread hate propaganda but found someone who disarmed him with curiosity.
Yeah. And Howard, prior to us getting together, the producer and director of the documentary is called Accidental Courtesy. They asked me, they followed me around the country. I was conducting interviews with KKK members, Black Lives Matter, and different, people. And they said, do you know Jeff Schoep? And I said, I know who he is. I've never met him. Would you be open to talking with him and interviewing him? I said, sure. So they contacted him. And then they let me know, okay, we were down in Alabama at the time. He's going to come down to Alabama. You can interview him tomorrow. And went to this place called Chris's Hot Dog Stand, or Chris's Grill, whatever, where Hank Williams made famous. And we're going to do this interview in there. So they said they got me a rental car, put me in the hotel, and said, we're going to get everything set up. We'll have Jeff here, and we're going to film you when you first come in and meet Jeff. We want to catch that on camera, then you'll sit down across from him in the booth and interview him. I said, okay, fine. So I go to the hotel, wait for their call. They call and say, okay, we're ready. So I get in this rental car and I drive to the grill. And when I pull up, I see who looks like Jeff sitting on this bench out front with this girl. So I'm thinking, well, that can't be him because he's supposed to be inside sitting in the booth. So I just sat in the vehicle, looking at him, just trying to figure this out. Maybe he came out for a smoke or something like that. I'm watching him. He's not going inside. So I got out, and when I got out and started walking towards him, I think, that is the dude. I'd never met him, but I knew what he looked like. I said, I wonder why he's out here. So I went over. I said, hey, are you Jeff Schoep? He goes, yeah. I said, I'm Daryl Davis. Shook his hand. He introduced me to his lady friend. And I said, I thought you were supposed to be inside. He goes, well, I was inside. I just came out or whatever. So we walk in. Of course, they didn't get to capture the moment that we met. So they're like all freaked out and stuff. And we sat down in the booth and I started interviewing him. And as he pointed out, he was getting along too well with me. Just chit-chatting, talking about music and this, that, and the other.
What fascinates me is that shared interests, like music, often melt ideological barriers faster than argument ever could.
And he's saying, he was a musician. I said, I'm a musician. And I said, well, what kind of music do you like? What kind of music do you play? Well, I play rock. And I said, well, rock was invented by black musicians. Oh, let's not go there. Elvis Presley invented rock. I said, no, Elvis did not invent rock, right? I said, Chuck Berry invented rock, right?
Fact check. Rock and roll's roots trace to African-American artists like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Sister Rosetta Tharpe, often appropriated without credit in mid-20th century America.
And he goes, okay, well, you probably know more about music than I do, So, but what difference does it make, what color the musician is? I said, well, it doesn't make any difference to me, but obviously it makes a difference to you because, in our history books, we talk about Ben Franklin. Who cares what color Ben Franklin is? If he invented electricity, he invented electricity, right? And he goes, well, yeah, well, I know about the guy who invented peanut butter. And I said, okay. I'm serious. And I said, okay, what's his name? He thought about it. He goes, Carver. I said, what's his first name? He said, George Washington Carver. I said, okay, very good. I shook his hand, right?
I think this exchange captures Daryl's genius. What I love about this beat is Daryl's restraint. He doesn't humiliate Jeff. He invites him to reason his way out.
And so then, what did he say? He runs the NSM, National Socialist Movement, and the whole white supremacy ideology is called the movement. All right. So anyway, I said, well, he goes, I said, it's a racist movement. He said, no, it's like a white civil rights movement for white people. He goes, you got the NAACP.
Founded in 1909 by a multiracial group of activists, including black leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois and white allies like Mary White Ovington, its core mission has always been to end racial discrimination and secure equal rights for all Americans, regardless of race. The NAACP played a pivotal role in the civil rights movement, leading legal battles, organizing protests, and challenging segregation across America.
And I said, yes. I said, but there are white members of the NAACP. Can I join the NSM? He goes, no. And, I said, well, why not? Well, then it's a racist movement. And then we got into it, and he goes, I will fight to the last bullet for my people. I'm like, whoa. He just kind of like, flipped out here. I said, okay.
Did you do that because you were realizing that you were getting a little too friendly with him?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That's so funny. Like, I'm keeping my ideology no matter what.
Yes.
That's funny. You're not going to trick me by me being a cool guy.
We laugh about it now, but at the time I was pretty stressed out.
I can imagine that fear, not fear of Daryl, but fear of losing identity. Hate movements often give members belonging. When empathy threatens that, panic sets in. This is what psychologists call identity threat response. When ideological walls crack, people often overcompensate. I interpret Jeff's outburst as fear, not anger. It's the fear of losing belonging, not conviction.
I would imagine.
Yeah, because I realized it. But
So what year was this?
2016.
16.
Yeah.
Daryl, what was the first year you came on the podcast?
Oh, gosh.
Kind of around then, right?
Yeah, 15 or 16.
Yeah. So how many other different things had you done where he had known about you? Had you done like a lot of different interviews, a lot of different?
Yeah.
Back
Oh,
then?
yeah. I've been, doing a lot of interviews, magazines, and
So you guys were just very aware of anybody who was like fucking up the cause.
Yeah.
With their awesome personality.
I mean, think about it. You're in this movement, and you've got a guy that's pulling people out, and he's not just pulling out just anybody. Some of these people
Grand Wizards,
Grand Dragons, and Imperial Wizards. Yeah,
Wizards and Dragons is fucking hilarious, by the way.
So after the thing was over, they're meandering around, getting their cameras packed up. I pulled Jeff aside and just talked to him, just one-on-one, man-to-man, no cameras, whatever. And we just talked about a couple of different things, talked about women and this, that, and the other, and just what guys talk about.
Normal.
Yeah, and we exchanged phone numbers, and then the following year, 2017. He was involved in that large white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, that turned deadly.
In 2017, Charlottesville, Virginia, became a flashpoint for national tensions during the Unite the Right rally. The event, marked by violent clashes, resulted in the death of counter-protester Heather Heyer after a white supremacist drove his car into a crowd.
And I knew a lot of the people who were involved in there, including...
that was the one when the guy in the car ran over people in the crowd?
Yes. And I know the guy who organized that thing. He's been in my house. I've sat down with them. I've been in some of their homes, etc. And
Charlottesville was America's wake-up call. It became a national turning point in discussions of white supremacy, leading to multiple convictions and renewed counter-extremism programs.
I'd gotten wind that Jeff was rethinking. I said, let me stop reading all this stuff and find out for myself. So I found his number that he had given me, and fortunately, he still had the same number. I called him up, and he remembered me, of course, and we chatted on the phone. And then I had we stayed in contact, and then in 2020, I had a gig up in New York City. And they booked me and said, talk about, how you meet these people and what you all talk about and what they think about this. I said, well, wait a minute. I can tell you about how I meet them and how I go about it. But as far as what they think about stuff, I can tell you, but that'll be secondhand. I say, if you want, I can bring people, because every now and then I bring a former Klansman that I took out of the movement or whatever to talk, answer questions. I say, well, how about if I just bring somebody? Whoa. We got to clear that with the sponsors or whoever. So they got back to me and said, yeah, who do you want to bring? I said, well, let me give you some options or whatever. So I called Jeff. I said, would you be willing to come out and talk about, your experiences, what got you in, what got you out, etc. And he said, yeah. So I called him back. I said, okay, I got this guy. He was the commander of the largest neo-Nazi organization in the country for 25 years. He was a 27-year member. And they said, okay, fine. So I called Jeff back and said, okay, you're on, man. They're going to fly you out to New York, and you'll come on. And this is the first time we'd ever done anything together like that, where we both are on the same page, right? And it went over very, very well. And that was the last gig either of us had before everything got shut down for COVID.
Now, when you said you're both on the same page, what do you mean by that?
Well, both in the same mindset. He's not fighting to the last bullet for his people. He's fighting for all people. He realizes that what he had experienced for 25 out of the 27 years he was a member, he no longer wanted to do.
And so when exactly was that shift for you?
So I broke free from the movement in March of 19, but I was going through this process for several years. So typically you want somebody in like the work that we do, we want someone to disengage from the movement, and then we work on the de-radicalization part. My journey was backwards. So I'm de-radicalizing while I'm still involved. Now, if somebody would have told me that while I was involved, those would have been fighting words, but it was basically like the mind wasn't catching up with what was going on. So that's when I was starting those last years when I was involved. I'm saying this is a white civil rights group. It's not a hate group. And from the outside looking in, you go, man, this guy's insane. Of course it's a hate group, and I see that now, obviously.
Tell them about your girlfriends who told you it was a cult.
Yeah, so when I was involved, every girl that I was seeing, and I was seeing quite a few different women, just about everyone that if they would come and check out the movement, they would say, whoa, this is like a cult, and you're like a cult leader. And I'm thinking in my head, what is wrong with these choices I'm making in women? What is with these poor choices? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
that's a serious cognitive dissonance. But that's the thought that goes through your head, is like, it's not me.
So was it initially meeting Daryl that started this journey for you?
Yes, it was one of the major first seeds.
And so, but you guys hadn't seen each other for quite a while. And then on your own, you just started exploring these ideas and changing your perspective.
Well, that, and then not long after meeting Daryl, I met a Muslim filmmaker by the name of Deeyah.
Deeyah is a Norway-based Emmy and Peabody Award-winning documentary filmmaker and human rights activist.
And in her film, White Right Meeting the Enemy. And I'd gotten to know Deeyah quite well over the course of that filming. And there was a number of people that left the NSM from interacting with Deeyah. And she has a very similar approach to how Daryl Davis approaches things. It's about listening. It's about being curious. It's about asking questions and sharing different perspectives.
What moves me most is how Daryl and Deeyah both used curiosity, not condemnation, to unlock transformation. I think this is what we often miss in activism. Listening isn't endorsement, it's strategy.
And that curiosity and that sincerity, it can help restructure the way someone thinks and the way they see people. So like Deeyah says to me, and this is actually in the film White Right Meeting the Enemy, you can see the change. Like, I show the clip a lot of times at my talks, and I'll tell the audience, I'll say, take a look at my eyes in that clip, because you can see it. The cameraman caught it, zoomed in on my eyes. She's saying, you know, the ideology that you, instead of telling me that I was wrong, she showed me. She says, the ideology that you stand for, the things that you believe in, they made me feel less than, ugly, not worthy. As a child growing up, that's how I felt. That's how your ideology made me feel. And no one aside from Daryl Davis had ever approached me with anything like that. I was told I was wrong, but that human connection, when you dehumanize another human being, you lose your humanity in that process, and I'd lost my humanity a long time ago. And what Daryl and Deeyah did is they cracked that door open, that window to compassion, and I could see their humanity. Daryl did something very similar. He told me about how racism and hate affected him as a child growing up. That hurt. That hurt, you know. I mean, I'm not going to say it at the time when I'm still in the movement,
right.
But in the inside, it really hurt. That bothered me. It's like, this is not this noble, grand cause that I believed it was, if it's causing that kind of pain and suffering to other people.
What strikes me here is how Daryl and Deeyah helped Jeff rediscover his humanity. Their methods, rooted in curiosity, dialogue, and genuine compassion, allowed him to see the flaws in his beliefs without feeling attacked or defensive.
So what were the steps that you had to take before you were ready to leave the movement?
I had to try everything, and I beat myself up over that a lot, but I kept saying, it's a white civil rights group. I'm telling every press outlet I'm sitting down with when they're in, don't call us a Nazi group. It's a white civil rights organization. Of course, most of them wouldn't publish that because it is what it is. But I'm going through these different changes. I'm having rules put into the organization where...
When you show someone the impact of their actions and beliefs, not by telling them they're wrong but by sharing how it made you feel, it can open their eyes. It's about planting seeds of doubt and letting compassion do the rest.
The last couple of years, they changed from the swastika in the public view to using an old runic symbol, the Odal rune. Today they switched back. They use the swastika again. But I was doing things like that to try to change the image of the group. As my own beliefs were shifting, I was trying to shift that into the party. And eventually I was like, because as a man, I thought, I'm going to fix this. I got to fix this. This mistake that I made, this terrible movement, I've got to fix it. And there's no fixing it. All I was doing was putting lipstick on a pig. You know, dressing up the Nazi party, trying to make it look pretty. It still is what it is. So eventually, after 2019 rolls around, I was like, I just have to get away from this. This is not right.
This truly is a story of hope. The story of Daryl Davis and Jeff Schoep proves that even the most entrenched beliefs can be challenged. Through empathy, dialogue, and a willingness to listen, we can bridge divides and create meaningful change. As we navigate a world filled with division, let this story remind us of the power of understanding and human connection. What lessons can you take from Daryl's approach to fostering dialogue? How can empathy play a role in your interactions with others? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories and daily highlights.